I am with Streetlight, and I'd like to first thank you for sticking around to the end of the day. Long day of very interesting sessions, and I know there's weather coming and everything, so I really appreciate you all being here. First of all, I think it does bear mentioning in this crowd, the company I work for, Streetlight, does not sell streetlights. We actually take a bunch of billions of big data points and turn them into usable multimodal travel metrics, which is relevant to this panel in that we've been helping customers understand the current mobility patterns and what that might mean for EV charging infrastructure, which is what we're here to talk about today. So just to set the stage a little bit, ERCOT estimates over 1 million EVs in Texas by 2028. So that's a heck of a lot of EVs on our roads, and those EVs need some place to charge, and there's a lot of money coming to the state and the nation through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law as part of the NEVI plans that we'll hear a little bit more from TxDOT today here on the stage. And that's all about building out those alternative fuel corridors in our state. And also equally important, we've got public agency fleets that also are looking to go green and electrify. So we've got folks here today with some expertise on that who will be speaking. And all of these things and meeting our goals of air quality and environmental justice and workforce development and economic development and building out all this infrastructure is going to require a lot of collaboration, which is why I'm really excited. We've got a great cross-section on the panel today that I'm about to let introduce themselves that represent levels from state, regional, and local. So I was really excited about that when I saw the composition of the panel. So I'm going to turn it over all to the panel just to quickly introduce themselves and who they represent, what their position is.
Gotcha. Hello. All right. Thank you for staying. Woo, you've made it to the end. Do they get like a treat or a snack or something? Okay. Carlos Evans, director with the City of Dallas, the director of the Office of Environmental Quality and Sustainability. I've been there for 1 year now, coming from EPA, where I was at EPA for 20 years. How much should we say? So in our department, there are two buckets of focus. So we have an environmental operations side that focuses on water conservation, stormwater enforcement, and the like. And then the second bucket is really, I think what we want to talk about today, advancing our climate action plan. So in 2020, City Council adopted our first ever climate action plan called the Comprehensive Environment and Climate Action Plan. It was unanimously adopted, as we like to say, so it has full support of council and our city manager. So it has 8 goals, 97 actions. One of the goals is focused on transportation. We have 2 targets, 1,500. We want to install 1,500 EV outlets by 2030 and have a fleet transition by 2040. So that's probably some standard targets for your standard major municipality, if I can say that correctly. But that's where we're moving.
Good afternoon. I'm Gary Glasscock, and I'm the director of the Fleet Management Department at the City of Houston. We handle all the fleet needs for all 22 city departments. That's roughly 13,700 vehicles and pieces of machinery and heavy equipment. Quite a chore. We've got a lot of demanding customers like the police department, fire department, solid waste, but really a good group to work with. In 2020, Houston also adopted a climate action plan, and there's a transportation facet to that plan. And within the transportation goals, there is a target of converting all the non-emergency city vehicles to EV by 2030. Right now, that stands at about 4,000 vehicles, but that's always in flux. And we're really actually looking now at a lot of the emergency vehicles. We think there's some opportunities there, but certainly a very big challenge, especially in light of the supply chain issues that we've been experiencing and a couple of other things that we've learned along the way. So we'll be happy to discuss that in a little bit.
Good afternoon. My name is Lori Clark. I'm a program manager at the North Central Texas Council of Government, so I'm that regional piece. So we serve as the regional planning agency for a 16 county area centered on the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. We serve as the metropolitan planning organization for 12 county areas. We work very closely with TxDOT, and we also host the Dallas-Fort Worth Clean Cities Coalition, which is a Department of Energy program that focuses really on advancing the use of affordable domestic fuels. So traditionally, it's always rhymed with transitioning towards alternative fuel vehicles. And as you might imagine, right now that conversation is around 90% on electric vehicles. So we work a lot with our local governments, talking about what they can do to be, as City of Dallas is talking about building out electric vehicle infrastructure to support the community at large, but also work with them about their own fleet operations, as Houston was just talking about. So yeah, happy to be here, and thanks for sticking it out for the day.
My name's Darren Anderson. I'm the Director of Strategy and Innovation at TxDOT. I'm your bookended TxDOT representative of the day. My role, I've been at TxDOT for 9 years. I came from military and then Department of Defense background. But my role for the department in those 9 years has been examining emerging technologies, kind of a futurist approach to that, looking at innovation, both internal and external to the department, nationwide as it relates to transportation, business process improvements, and the research initiatives of the department, as well as national research. And in examining those relative to what our mission is, what we do at TxDOT, as well as transportation agencies across the state, and what might we need to be thinking about as we move forward into the future. And certainly 9 years ago when I got here, electrification and the advent of electric vehicles was one of the very first topics that we really focused on. Knowing that TxDOT is in our fleet has been pretty forward-thinking for decades now. They adopted propane vehicles back when that was a thing. They still have and use compressed natural gas dump trucks and pickups, and we saw electrification coming, and we started thinking about the department first. But we quickly realized that unlike those other alternative fuels, this had a portent for really impacting the entirety of the nation and the world in terms of adoption. And we needed to start thinking about what might that mean for mobility in the state, and a lot of its downstream implications. And as a result of that, I was responsible for developing our electric vehicle charging infrastructure plan to support the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act, funding that goes directly to TxDOT to distribute and deploy charging infrastructure in the state as one of the major initiatives within that act. And now that it's completed, the plan, I've transitioned that over to another division in the department, but I'm here to close out that activity.
Great, and thanks for working in a lot of your goals into that introduction. So I get to skip my first question and get right to some of the more fun stuff. So you talked about your goals and what your cities and agencies are doing. How do you think? What is your view of what your agency's role is, and what the role of collaboration is in reaching not only your own municipality or state's goals, but kind of wider electrification goals? I know we have huge electrification goals as a nation. So. Go ahead and start, Carlos.
I think our role really first is to serve our residents in trying to build out an EV infrastructure network on city property. I think that's our first responsibility, and also while leading by example by transitioning our fleet. I was just on the phone with our fleet director, and he's making great progress using FY 2022 dollars and FY 23 dollars, we've purchased approximately 90 EV vehicles for our fleet. So we're making progress. Again, this is my first year with the city of Dallas, but it's kind of from a national perspective, I feel like we're early in our journey. Again, we just passed our climate action plan in 2020, but we're making significant progress. So, and for example, last year on the fleet side, we just completed our electrification study. So identifying what vehicles to purchase and what vehicles we can transition. So from that, Director Gibson has made progress in purchasing 90 plus vehicles. So that's good. But also externally, we have to serve our residents and really create good partnerships with the private side, the private sector. We have to understand, where they're putting their EV infrastructure, make sure that we put our EV infrastructure in a manner that is consistent or is educated or informed by their network, so that our residents can have a full and really equitable network for everybody in North Dallas, West Dallas, and the southern sector. So we're working with people like Lori to make sure that happens.
Well, we at the City of Houston also look at ourselves as an example for private and public agencies, those public agencies within the region that don't have quite the resources that we do. We're looking at developing policy, both for internal and external stakeholders, things like code changes for how many chargers should be placed in an apartment complex, how many chargers should be placed in a shopping mall, standards for those chargers so that they remain safe for the public. And then we're learning a lot as we go. We've got roughly 90 chargers in now. And one of the things we've done is incorporate a cloud-based reporting system so that we can really get a good feel for how these chargers are being used, where they're being used, the time of day they're being used, that sort of thing, so that we can take that actual experience and then apply that to best practices that we can communicate throughout the region.
So one of the words that has been coming up a lot throughout the day is collaboration. And as a regional agency, I think that's really where we fit in. Our cities are doing a great job of looking at what's happening within their boundaries. I think it's our job to look at what's happening across those boundaries. And Dallas is looking at, hey, we need to knit together the connectivity of EV chargers in southern Dallas. And we're like, yeah, and then we need to go a little bit further southwest and look at Duncanville and DeSoto and some of the other suburbs down there. So I think that's a big piece of our role, and bringing those disparate stakeholders together. The transportation infrastructure and the electrical grid has never had to talk to each other before necessarily in a big way, and now it does, and it has to do so very quickly and in a way that's going to be very easily exposed to the public at large if it doesn't go well, right? So bringing utility stakeholders to the table as well. Workforce development is a big piece. Once all of this stuff is built, we got to keep it up and running. Our agency is the Council of Governments. One of our departments is a workforce development department that serves 14 of our 16 counties. I am embarrassed to say that I've worked there for over 17 years, and for 16 of those years, I never talked to our workforce development people. But in the past year, we've started talking a lot, which is great, and it's really nice to have that colleague within the same employer that I can tap and reach out to and figure out how to have some of those conversations and do some of that work, which is daunting. And I think keeping up with what the cities are doing so that we can facilitate that peer exchange so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And, one city is working on codes. Hey, the next city that's asking about codes, hey, guess what? Here's what was already done in our own region in the state of Texas, right? Because in Texas, we tend to be a little bit Texas specific about the examples that we like to use. and even region specific within the state of Texas. And then last thing I'll flag is because we are connected to the Department of Energy and their network of national labs, there's a lot of data that we can bring, a lot of tools and resources that we can bring that are really not biased. It's very data driven. And so when our fleets have questions, when our cities have questions, we can kind of point them towards those data resources. We also do, I have to give a shout out to our data set on electric vehicle registration data. We buy that from the we buy registration data from the Department of Motor Vehicles and process it. And it's posted for anybody to use. So if anybody wants to know how many electric vehicles are in the state, in a specific zip code, city, county, dfwcleancities.org/EVNT for electric vehicles, North Texas. And registration data is posted for anybody.
And hit on our goal originally, but I'd say our goal in both the immediate and the relatively long term is a quality deployment of the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Plan as it relates to Texas. And that's everything from efficient to effective to safe to reliable, and probably several other adjectives. And within that, this is not a traditional mission for not only our DOT but any state DOT, and it's been a real struggle in national discussion and in state, continuing in state discussion about what our role is as it relates to infrastructure for this, capability, because we don't fund gas stations and build those. So, but we're given this federal money. We're going to do the best job we can with it. I think we have an, outstanding plan. Lori was a key contributor to that, as a matter of fact. And Texas Electric Vehicle Planning is all you have to Google, and it'll take you to our webpage. And I will tell you that it is an exceptional wealth of knowledge. The electric vehicle count is on there, but there's endless amounts of maps and the program plan itself. If you want to actually know about how we're going to award the grants, all of that information is there, to include things like scoring criteria and all the steps that have to be taken. So we've been as transparent as we possibly can be on the plan. So it goes to your collaboration part of that. And that's going to continue because we have to build out, according to the requirements of federal government, infrastructure along the interstates first. We call them alternative fuel corridors, but it's effectively all our interstates. But beyond that, the way our plan is laid out, we've put what we call a study area at every county seat that's not one of those interstate areas. And then we also have every single MPO has a breakdown of formula funding. So end result is, after the interstates, it's about a 50-50 split between the metropolitan planning organizations and the rural counties on what the funding will be. And that collaboration to site them and deploy them and plan for them is going to be ongoing for the next 5 to 15 years. And it'll take annual, continual development of the plans. And frankly, the industry is deploying at the same time. So we have to track that. We don't want to overdevelop an area if industry already has come. So we have to think about that and adjust our plans as we go.
That's great. So for the next question, we're talking about kind of what your role is, what your goals are, a little bit of what you've done already with the planning and some of the vehicles that Dallas has bought. I'd like to go to Gary first on this one to talk a little bit about some of the challenges you've faced. I know you kind of mentioned that a little bit in the intro. When I get a little deeper into what the challenges you've faced so far and kind of taking the actions you've taken so far towards those goals.
Well, I think by far the biggest challenge has been related to the supply chain issues. We've had a number of vehicle orders that have been canceled by the manufacturers, and when we're lucky, they're simply pushed to the next model year. But in most cases, they've just been canceled, and so we're dealing with that on a regular basis. We also had an order of chargers that could not be delivered on time because of material shortages. So those things have combined to slow our program down considerably. The biggest inhibitor, though, of course, is funding. Right. So in order to meet our goal of converting even just 4,000 vehicles by 2030, we need at least $120 million between now and then. Our fiscal year 2023 budget for capital budget for rolling stock is 66 million. Of that 66 million, only 3 million goes to the type of vehicles that we're targeting here. All the rest of the money gets spent on necessary police cars, fire trucks, utility vehicles, that sort of thing that are mission critical for the city. And so it's going to take some money from somewhere for us that's not in the current budget for us to meet our goals. And at this point, that funding really isn't on the horizon anywhere. And so we've talked about doing some bonding, that sort of thing, but we have to compete with all the other programs in the city. They're also looking for money as well. And then it just basically comes down to a prioritization. So those are some of the bigger challenges we're dealing with. When it comes to the technology and the labor needs, we're actually looking forward to it because the EVs, believe it or not, are actually much simpler than the conventional vehicle. There's a lot fewer moving parts. And so the maintenance requirements are much reduced. And so with that, we don't need quite the same staffing that we do with a conventional fleet. We're also looking at our emergency, we'll call it emergency fleet, but the vehicles that in functions that operate 24 hours a day, 3 shifts, right? So currently with the gasoline model, a gasoline vehicle can be refueled in 10-15 minutes. That allows one vehicle to be used 24 hours in a day, and just keep going until we need to do PM work. We can't do that with an EV, right? So we have to double the size of the fleet in those operations that work 24 hours. And so those are just a few of the challenges. And one of the other big ones I have to mention is EV anxiety. And so when we go to departments and we're meeting with the chief of police or the head of solid waste and telling them, hey, we need to convert so many vehicles to EV. And the first thing they automate, well, we can't perform our function if we do that. And they do have a lot of valid points, and it's up to us as the fleet group to go in and address all of their concerns so that they feel comfortable and support our transition. That's been a pretty big marketing effort. I think we've made some huge strides, but there's still a few non-believers out there that we're working on.
Who else has faced some challenges? Carlos?
Yeah, I've just so Gary, so your equivalent in Dallas. I'm usually next to you trying to cheerlead. Our director's like, hey, fire department, police department, or whoever, public works, or whoever it is, try EVs. And we're like, yes, try them. And they're like, well, I don't know if they meet our operational requirements. So, but I think it's a gradual cultural change that is turning out for the best. But for challenges, so that's one. I think when I speak with our fleet director, another one is, as he's trying to integrate or install EV infrastructure, oftentimes he's trying to install EV infrastructure on old city buildings, and that gets very time-consuming, expensive, and complicated. So he's trying to figure out, how can we use the best dollars, our dollars in the best way, have the appropriate infrastructure for our city fleet throughout our city, again, just as efficiently and as cost effectively as possible, without just quite frankly, burning through our funds. So that's one. Again, making sure the fleet meets operational requirements is another. When public facing, we have to make sure. So we did an equity a study with Lori Shop last year, and we found that approximately 80% of people who live in the city of Dallas who own EVs charge their vehicles at home. But approximately 55% of people who live in the city live in multifamily homes. Of the public facing EV infrastructure that we have, most of that EV infrastructure is in the high rent districts. So for our multifamily housing in the low income, moderate income areas, we don't have the infrastructure typically in those areas. So how do we build infrastructure in those areas? Again, that's calling for funds, and that's calling for leadership with it, which I think we have, and some really an analysis as to whether we have the infrastructure like buildings and whatnot in those areas to really integrate EV infrastructure in those communities.
Yeah, I know equity is a really relevant piece, and we just had a great panel on that. What about the planners on the other end of the spectrum down there? What were your challenges as you worked on the NEVI plan, Darren or Lori, with the coordination you've been doing across efforts, obviously?
We have a lot of local governments to coordinate in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So we don't, our region is a little different where, the city of Houston kind of is that gravitational center of the Houston metro. We've got Dallas, we've got Fort Worth, and we have Denton, and we've got 140 plus individual municipalities that surround all of those. So it's a really varied range of objectives and goals and levels of understanding and trying to help all of our local governments and kind of meet everybody where they are and doing that education, just like we've been talking about serving citizens at large. We're a council of governments. We're of, by, and for our member governments. We have to meet our local governments where they are, right? And help them get to a place where they can all take action as they see fit. I think a little bit right now has been kind of reassessing our role. For quite a while, it was about trying to educate and grow awareness of electric vehicles as a viable technology for the state of Texas. The industry is taking care of that now, right? Like we've seen this massive industry shift over the past 18 months or so. And so now our role with what's going to be coming with NEVI is going to be a little more traditional infrastructure planning, which my team, we're in the transportation department, but we're part of the air quality team. That's not necessarily traditionally been our bag as far as what we've done from a Clean Cities perspective. So a little bit of that. And also there's so much right now. Like the opportunity is immense, but in and of itself, it's a huge challenge to keep up with all of the incentive programs that are available. Practically every single one of them, no matter what it's called, has some eligibility for electrification, and trying to make heads or tails of that so that we can guide our stakeholders through. You want to look at this one for that purpose, and you want to look at this one. Oh, you're for profit, so you want to look at this tax credit. Oh, but you can also pair this. Oh, you're a nonprofit, or you don't have a tax liability, so you thought you can look at a tax credit, but now there's a direct pay option because everything is different, even though it's called the same thing. It's a lot. So that's it's a good problem to have, but it's a lot.
I think it's easily to say that we had to learn a new industry, being electric vehicle and its associated charging industry, and learn two existing industries that we really never paid attention to, which were the fueling industry and the grid industry, and all that represents. Learn all those stakeholders, engage those stakeholders, and then with about 4 people, develop an overall program plan that's going to extend for 5 to 15 years that satisfies all those stakeholders. And that was a unique problem that we had to take on that I think, again, I think that team did admirably, and really proud of where we're at as we get to the execution phase.
For the record, I have not heard this framed as a 5 to 15 year program before now, so I'm a little bit alarmed.
Well, the way I look at I say that because we have 5 years of program funding. We've already received the first 2 years worth, but we've been waiting for the feds to allow the beginnings of the actual deployments. But once a specific station is installed and fully operational and meets all those requirements to begin serving the public, then there's an additional 5 years of operations and maintenance tail to that. if you think of over 5 years of programmatics, at the very earliest, if we go 5 years from today, you're tacking on another 5 to there. So there's 10 right there. And we're already about a year into this and haven't even put anything in the ground. So I'm saying up to 15 years of program.
And let me just clarify for the record, separate topic. Some departments have are slow to adopt EVs, but Public Works, as you saw from their presentation today, is not one of those. They're one of our leaders, so I didn't want to get in trouble. Ali is very much supportive of our EV transition.
Can I throw out one more challenge? And I'm surprised that the words haven't been said more today. Buy America, right? Like all of the federal money that can be used on charging station. Well, if it comes from federal highways, the chargers have to be Buy America compliant. You get 50 states going out trying to buy chargers all at the same time. Well, recipients of the funding from 50 states all going to buy chargers at the same time. And you think Buy America compliant charging stations aren't going to come in short supply, and the things that we've been talking about in terms of inflation and supply chain and labor and y'all, I think it's going to be a hot mess.
Hence the 15 years.
Fair.
Well, that's great. Thanks for sharing those challenges. So I guess we're rounding the home stretch here. So to end on a little bit more of an uplifting note, what are you most excited about in this kind of journey, these next 10 to 15 years into even further out in the process of electrification?
I mean, I'm really thankful for, so in the city of Dallas, we have like really strong advocates for various things, but our environmental advocates are just top notch. During budget season, it's like the environmental advocates and the library advocates, and our council members are like, we need to figure out the environment and we need to make sure that our libraries are great, So it's great. We have the support from our residents. We have, our council, our city council is very supportive of they're very sustainable and very supportive of EVs or renewable energy just generally. And our city manager is supportive of all this. So that's one of the reasons why I came, is because we have great opportunities at the city of Dallas. We just, need to figure out the funding and operational parameters and all that kind of stuff. But
Well, we're looking forward to the benefits of EVs, of course. So carbon dioxide for every light duty vehicle that we change out, we're reducing CO2 emissions by 2 tons on an annual basis. So when you start looking at a fleet of 10,000 vehicles, that's a lot that goes away when conventional vehicles are replaced. Something that we're also looking at very keenly right now is with respect to our heavy duty vehicles. We haven't seen a whole lot of technology shift over the last couple of years with commercial heavy vehicles and the battery electric technology, but we are seeing a trend to hydrogen. And of course, Houston is one of the global leaders in hydrogen production and distribution. And so we're really looking at that hard and trying to get involved so we can encourage that development.
I echo the excitement around medium and heavy duty vehicles. I think that's a really big opportunity for our agency. When we talk about electrification, we do talk about both of the electrified platforms, so hydrogen, fuel cell, and battery. And the opportunity for very transformative impacts, I think we're an ozone non-attainment area, in case nobody heard that. Where's James from DFW Airport? He called us out as like, you'd have to add a new road to the chart, right, for us. Yeah, we're going into a new category. But the opportunity for transformative improvement on our air quality, talking about like exposure to criteria pollutants, diesel exhaust, and things like that, especially as medium and heavy duty transition, because the business community, the private sector fleets are adopting this technology very eagerly in many cases. I think that's really exciting. And then the grid. I was in a session on Friday of last week with some utilities that were talking about different implications of electric vehicles. It is fascinating. It is a huge challenge, but it's also a really big opportunity for the transportation system and the electric grid to complement each other in a really powerful way. I don't work for a utility. I don't have to learn that. I don't have to manage it. I want to learn more of it because it is so fascinating. So I'm really excited to see that happen.
You just changed my answer. Because you hit on something that I do think about, but it didn't really dawn on me, is regardless of where we get with the adoption of electric vehicles and whether or not hydrogen comes into play, maybe fusion reactors 30 years from now is my dream. But we will, I think, because of the attention this has drawn, have a great impact on the advancement of our grid. I think that it has shone a light on, we have the ice storms and all that, but the more of these variables and these compounding demands on the overall infrastructure, it's highlighting that, and it's bringing attention at the state level on what do we need to do as a whole to improve our capability in the state. And if anything, that really excites me because I'm just a user, right? And I think it's going to benefit all of us to have a much more resilient and capable grid.
Great. Well, looks like we saved everybody 50 seconds at the end of the session, so you can thank us.
All right, thank you.